Erik Erikson was born on June 15, 1902 and died on May 12, 1994. He was a Danish, German, American developmental psychologist and psychoanalyst known for his theory on psychological development of human beings. And he coined the concept of identity crisis. Isa siyang professor sa mga kilalang prominent institutions tulad ng Harvard and University of California. Kahit na wala siyang bachelor degree, naging pa rin siyang isang professor sa mga university and naging 12 most eminent psychologists of the 20th century. Erik Erikson was a neo-Freudian psychologist who accepted many of the central tenets of Freudian theory. But, dinagdag niya yung mga sarili niyang ideas and sarili niyang beliefs. His theory of psychosocial development is centered on what is known as the epigenetic principle, which proposes that all people go through a series of 8 stages.
Psychosocial development is one of the best-known theories of personality in psychology. Belief that personality develops in a series of stages. Erikson's theory describes the impact of social experience across the whole lifespan. Here, we will find out what we are and how other people recognize us. Dito, sinasabi, yung personality natin ay nade-develop siya gradually. And it can help us yung ma-experience natin sa buhay at yung interaction natin sa ibang tao ay makakatulong sa atin na mas maunawaan natin yung sarili natin. And it provides a broad frameworks from which to view development throughout the entire lifespan. And it also allows us to emphasize the social nature of human beings and the important influence that social relationships have on development. One of the main elements of Erikson's psychosocial states theory is the development of ego identity. Ego identity is the conscious sense of self what we develop through social interaction. So dito, ang pakikipag-interact natin sa iba ay makakatulong sa ating development as a human and makakatulong din society natin na makilala yung sarili natin. And also it will help us to be aware of everything and we know what we are doing. Nakapaloob rin dito ang tinatawag nating identity crisis. Are you questioning who you are? Maybe what your purpose is or what your values are. If so, you may be going through what some call an identity crisis. The term identity crisis first came from developmental psychologist and psychoanalyst Erik Erikson. He introduced the ideas of adolescence identity crisis as well as midlife crisis, believing that personalities develop by resolving crises in life. If you're experiencing an identity crisis, you may be questioning sense of self or identity. This can often occur due to big changes or stressors in life, or due to factors such as age or advancement from a certain stage. For example, school, work, or childhood.
The first one is basic trust versus basic mistrust. The virtue on this is hope. Second is autonomy versus shame. This stage talks about will. Third, the initiative versus guilt on this stage will lead us to purpose. Fourth, industry versus inferiority. Competence is the virtue on this stage. Fifth is identity versus role confusion. This is where identity crises fall and the virtue of fidelity. Next one is intimacy versus isolation. The virtue on this is love. The generativity versus stagnation on this stage will lead us to the virtue of care. Lastly, ego integrity versus despair. The virtue of this stage involves the feeling of living a successful life or what we call wisdom. At each psychosocial stage, people face a crisis that needs to be successfully resolved in order to develop the psychological qualities central to each stage. Erickson's theory marked a shift from Freud's psychosexual theory, and in that, it describes the impact of social experiments across the whole lifespan instead of simply focusing on childhood events. It follows the traditional approach of development.
Major weaknesses of Erickson's psychosocial development theory is that Erickson himself concedes the theory falls short of explaining how and why development occurs. Hindi na-explain or walang proof na naibigay si Erik Erikson kung paano nga ba nangyayari ang sin development or kung paano nga ba nagde-develop ang isang tao. Erickson does not clarify how the outcomes of one psychosocial theory influence one's personality in a later stage.
The first strength Erickson theory has an ability to connect important psychosocial development across a person's lifespan. This approach provides a pragmatic perspective on personality development. Erickson theory showing the psychosocial development of a child into adulthood. During the infancy, the child developed the psychosocial based on the society until they become adulthood. It connects the psychosocial development of a person's lifespan. Another strength of psychosocial development theory is that it demonstrates middle and late adulthood are active and significant periods of personal growth, while the other theories deem both stages irrelevant. Middle and late adulthood are active based on their age. They become aware on their personal growth. Their personal growth are continuously growing, especially the middle adulthood. But it is slowly changed. Unlike in the adulthood, people can see changes. Adding to that theory's strength is that people can relate to the various stages through their own experiences.